Hey, it's Quazimotoe with Good Game Fun Time. Welcome back for another character discussion. Today we're talking about Moira. Let's go over her abilities first. She has the Biotic Grasp, and it has a primary and secondary fire. The primary fire, it's a beam. It's on the left hand, and it does a heal to allies in front of you. The secondary fire is a targeted lock beam, and it does damage to the target it locks on. It's not as accurate as Symmetra's lock-on beam, but it functions just the same. Then she has the Biotic Orb as her first ability, and when you select it, you get to pick between healing and damage orbs, and they launch and they bounce around and deal damage or heal, whichever one you choose to launch. She has the Fade ability, which increases her movement speed and makes her untargetable. To get out of tight situations, you use that. And her ultimate ability is Coalescence. It's a beam type, and it launches damage and healing, depending on which target you hit with it. And let's go into them into detail. So the primary fire for the Biotic Grasp is a beam type. It shoots straight in front of you. It heals for 80 health per second. The speed of it's 30 meters per second. It has a 15-meter range, has up to 9 seconds of healing, but it does have a reload time, so it's got a meter that drains as you heal. It has a 45-second charge time, and then 9 seconds when you deal damage. So if you deal damage with your secondary fire, it recharges your healing beam a lot faster. So the secondary fire is the locked-on beam. It has 50 damage per second. It heals for a flat 30 health per second if you're dealing damage. Has a range of 21 meters, has unlimited ammo, cannot give headshots either. So what that one does is you use your right hand and it fires a long range beam that saps enemy's health. It heals you and replenishes her biotic energy for your Biotic Grasp primary fire healing. Her orb, as I said before, Biotic Orb is her first ability. And as you hit the orb button, you get to pick between damaging or healing orbs. So the damage orbs, when you launch them, deal 50 damage per second, up to a maximum of 200 damage. And they actually bounce around off walls and stuff. The healing does 75 per second, 300 healing maximum. The speed of projectile is 20 meters per second. And then if you get to a target, whether it's an enemy or a teammate, it slows down and does 5.5 meters per second. The max range is 5 meters with tethering. So as it passes someone, if they're 5 meters or less toward the orb, it slows down and heals or damages them. It has a 10-second duration or until the healing or damage maximums are reached. It has a 10-second cooldown and no headshots. The Fade ability is her evasive ability, quick movement. So you have a movement speed of 18.75 meters per second, has a 0.8 second duration, so it doesn't last very long, and a 6-second cooldown. But it does allow you to quickly teleport a short distance, making you invulnerable to damage and untargetable, whether it's healing or damage abilities for the target. Her ultimate, Coalescence, is a beam type attack. It does 70 damage per second if you're shooting it at an enemy, and it does 140 health per second with 50 health per second for your self-regeneration. It has a movement speed of 90 meters per second, a maximum range of 30 meters, 8-second duration, does not give headshots. But it is a pretty functional beam whether you're healing or damaging with it. So it's just a straight beam that shoots for 30 meters and you can swirl it around and damage and heal at the same time. A short overview of Moira. Her abilities enable her to contribute healing or damage in any crisis. She's pretty flexible with the healing and damage. She's a new addition to Overwatch. She's a good character to use if you're unsure whether you want to do healing or DPS. She's not the highest DPS healer, but she is very functional in tight spots. Being that she has a low health pool, though, you don't want to go running off by yourself unless you're flanking to pull enemies toward your team. Her Biotic Grasp gives her short-range options, but her orbs contribute longer range, her hands-off damage and healing. So that's passive damage when you shoot the orb. You don't have to run in and damage. It just travels toward the enemy. So it keeps you out of tight spots where you could get cornered or flanked pretty easily. She can also fade to escape groups and remain close to allies in need of support. Once you charge your Coalescence, she can save multiple allies from elimination at once or finish off weakened enemies. She's not a primary healer, she's just a support character, but what she offers in healing can offset the tide of battle pretty easily. Talk about some strategies real quick for Moira. She's a support hero that can flank the enemy backline with her immense mobility. Though the Biotic Grasp healing isn't a lock-on or instantly reach the target, she can heal multiple allies at the same time, giving her higher average healing when compared to other supports, but she does lose points in her biotic charge. So just be mindful of that whenever you're using her to heal continuously. and just make sure you're refilling her healing resource and her health. You can easily do that when you track the enemy with lock-on beam. It can reach mid-range targets. Fade provides her an immense mobility, and it makes her invulnerable and very hard to kill. Biotic Orb is very useful in both healing and dealing damage, especially when using it in a tight space, as I said earlier. Your Coalescence can both heal allies and deal damage to the enemy. It's useful as the open attack since it bypasses barriers. While she is a very mobile and strong character in 1v1 situations against so many heroes thanks to her lifesteal, she can easily be killed by tanks and any burst damage that can go through her health. So just watch out for those high dealing DPS and tanks when you are trying to go toe to toe. Make sure you have time to back out. Don't go out into open areas with her. Her healing has the resource, as I said, that requires her healing damage to keep your life at full. And her damage is very low, even though it can lock on. She doesn't have a real utility like the other supports, in which her multiple healing is made up to fill lackluster. Here are some tips for your Biotic Orb, your first ability. You want to make sure when you're firing it, it goes into a big group of people, whether it's enemies or allies, so that you can maximize your healing and damage dealt. And you want to find simple angles when you fire your orb so that it's close to a wall, so that when it slows down and bounces back, it's maximizing the damage or healing done. So there's really no accurate way to predict trajectory of the orb beyond the second bounce. So you just kind of have to guess at the angles and make sure that you're keying in on locations that bounce pretty good and have a good amount of enemies or allies in the area. And if you're unsure about which orb to use, you can always use the healing orb, because it does more healing than the damage orb does damage. But you also don't want to use it whenever you don't need it. So if your allies are topped up on health and you can use your primary attack to heal them, you shouldn't use the orb unless it's initiating a battle, so that your allies don't have to go in against enemies with full health. It is a good AoE healing and an AoE damage as well. For your Fade ability, you want to avoid lethal damage, because your invincibility granted by Fade allows more to survive the situation. It's otherwise deadly, so you want to make sure you time it properly to allow you to the self-destructive Diva or Junkrat's mines and get out of the range of dangerous ultimates such as the Tactical Visor or Blizzard. It gives you untargetability, so it can be used to get out of the Graviton Surge or McCree's Deadeye. You can also use it to disengage from enemies. As a healer, your survival is crucial to keeping your team alive and winning fights. So she's better suited for duels than most of her other healers, but when she finds herself in life-threatening situations, she should fade away. As you have movement and invisibility during this ability, make your best to break line of sight with attackers. It's almost guaranteed to confuse them. Because it is a teleport function, they can't actually see which direction you're running. Just remember, it has a 6-second cooldown, so you want to get out of sight and stay out of sight until the cooldown pops back up. It's good to use to engage singled out or weakened enemies. Your damage dealing capabilities as Moira will usually be enough to execute damaged enemy squishies. However, using Fade this way, you may find yourself out of position and without escape cooldown because you use it to engage battle. When using your ultimate, Coalescence, you can use it pretty liberally. It's a low value ultimate. It recharges very fast despite how much the charge cost is. It can be at its peak efficiency when you're able to line up many targets in its area of effect. So for your channeling, use your increased movement speed to reposition yourself to line those enemies or allies up so that as many heroes as possible are affected by your ult. Perfect scenario for Coalescence is a fight in a tight area, such as an alleyway or corridor, where both allies and enemies movement is limited, so that way you can heal and damage at the same time on everyone. So you do want to prioritize your ultimate with healing over damage, because it's easier to line up your allies than the enemies, and the damage is very underwhelming for an ultimate ability, while burning through its healing is very hard, because it does heal for a lot per second compared to how much people can deal damage to your allies. That being said, if you are proficient in tracking, you should try to take down low health targets. However, if your enemy receives any healing at all, you should usually let go of them. Killing healed targets with Coalescence, 70 damage per second alone will simply take too much time. It's just too much to channel onto one enemy who's being healed by a good healer. Just remember that Coalescence is not enough to out-heal most of offensive ultimates, such as Tactical Visor, Death Blossom, well-used Rocket Barrage, etc. They will outpace your ultimate. However, using it more can significantly increase time to kill and allow allies to retreat to safety, so use it as a backup plan to get out and regroup. When using Coalescence, Moira begins a fairly vulnerable attack. Her self-healing is limited health per second. She can receive over 100 with her basic abilities, and she cannot use Fade So be mindful when using Coalescence that you can't teleport out of a situation with it. When you are a target of an enemy ultimate, it's a much better idea to ensure your safety first with basic abilities, mostly Fade, and only then activate your ultimate. Even though it has a good healing output, your ultimate should not be used as an oh no moment to help your allies. Transcendence is a much better healing for an oh no moment, so use your Coalescence proactively to use it to support pushes and slow down your enemies. If you attempt to out-heal Graviton Surge combined with another offensive ultimate, it's advisable to send your Biotic Orb first and then start your channeling your ultimate. This way you can achieve a short burst of 200 healing per second, which should suffice to counter a regular Dragon Blade, for example. Let's talk about Moira's general strategies. So make sure you think, prioritize your own safety, only heal allies who are in immediate risk of dying. It's beneficial to heal a group of allies. Try to only damage low health targets, prioritize healing over damaging, and only damage enemies that are not behind barriers. That will allow you to increase your recharge for your healing resource quicker. And don't use Moira to damage barriers. It's a waste of your time, it won't do any good, and you're terrible at dealing damage. So she is primarily a healer, but she does deal damage as well as self-heal. In my time playing with Moira, I've realized that she is a squishy character that deals minimal damage, does not maximize her healing very well. You have to make sure you're monitoring your resources correctly, dealing damage to recharge your resource as well as self-heal. But she's good for battles, getting out of tight spots, and is a well-rounded support character for healing and dealing damage at the start of battles and then finishing off low health enemies. Using the orb to track enemies around corners and to burst heal your allies is a well thought out plan. The resource management, as I said before, is key to her survival on a team. So thanks again for stopping in for another Quazi Quickie character discussion of Overwatch. New character Moira. Appreciate everyone watching. Thanks for stopping in and have a great day. Thank you so much for watching the channel. Hope you enjoyed the video. You can go ahead and click on the right to subscribe and on the left for another video to watch. Hope you enjoyed the content. Hope you stop by again. I greatly appreciate the support. And as always, happy gaming!